One last follow-up on everyone's favorite post of mine. As we get into the question of Sodom and Gomorrah, I'm really not going to go too much into an answer, but I want to peel back the onion and ask what I ask here all the time. Why? I have a few points to make, but by way of background, Dan McClellan claims
the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah had absolutely nothing to do with homosexuality, and there's not a single syllable of the Bible that says otherwise.
Dan claims the Bible is not univocal, and you cannot interpret the Bible with the Bible.
The Bible cannot interpret the Bible, and when folks say we need to let the Bible interpret the Bible, what they're really saying is you need to let me interpret the Bible. The Bible is not univocal. The notion that it can interpret itself requires we impose this presupposition of univocality, the notion the text speaks with a single unified and consistent voice from a single unified and consistent perspective. And that presupposition is not supported by any data whatsoever. It's just a dogma that one must choose to accept.
But then Dan does go ahead and interpret Genesis 19 with Ezekiel, even though Ezekiel's writing is nowhere near the time of Genesis 19.
You go to Ezekiel 16:49, and the sin of Sodom is explicitly an overabundance of bread and prosperous ease, and they did not strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy and the oppressed.
I will agree with Dan that the homosexuality of Sodom and Gomorrah was not the root of the evil that resulted in their destruction, but as both Genesis and Ezekiel say, the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah were fat and happy, self-centered, and in their self-centeredness, the homosexuality was a symptom. But then Dan finishes with this, and this is where my greatest objection lay.
So the point of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis 19 was not to condemn homosexuality or say these are the consequences of allowing homosexuality. And to deploy the passage that way is to misread, misunderstand, and misuse the Bible solely to support the structuring of power, values, and boundaries in favor of right-wing authoritarian identity politics and over and against the human rights of marginalized and vulnerable groups. And it needs to stop.
But for this post, I want to jump to the bottom line. A lot of people have argued on here one way or another on the meaning of Genesis 19 and the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and other passages in the Bible. But the real question in this is, who are you trying to please? Where does your desire lay? Are you reading the Bible to ask, what is it saying to you? Or are you reading the Bible to figure out a way to get around something the Bible's saying? Like the Pharisees who had dedicated their wealth to God. It was still available to them, but by dedicating it to God, they didn't have to use it for something else, like taking care of people to whom they had a responsibility. When you read the Bible, what is your bias? What are you trying to accomplish? And ultimately, are you really taking God seriously?